5 steps to overcome any fear. Hi, my name is Dr. Meghana Dikshit. I'm the author of the book You Matter and founder of The Mantra. Today I want to talk about fear to you. Before you overcome your fear, it's very important where does the fear come from. Fear is an emotion that comes up when you lack courage. Yes, that's a truth bomb. You heard it right. Now, if you have to understand why do you fear and what are these fears? You may have fears like fear of rejection, fear of cockroaches, or fear of public speaking, fear of aeroplanes, fear of lifts, or maybe even fear of failure or fear of success. Any sort of fears which are probably tangibly you can explain, or intangible fears which you don't understand. All of them stem from lack of courage. Now, what do I mean by that? Why do you lack courage? And what exactly happens in your space when fear comes up? Fear is an emotion that comes up when your mind projects you the worst case scenario that can come up in future. Where does this future come from? And why do your mind gives you the worst case scenario? Now let me take you back 7.5 million of years ago when we humans first started trotting on this planet. We had no muscle power, neither we had the tools. So we were living in a cave, and we were at the lowest of the life chain. And every other ferocious animal was a predator and we were the prey. Now, your brain back then was designed to keep you safe and comfortable. And that's the primitive brain which is still there in your brain. There are 3 layers of your brain, but this primitive brain, which is called as reptilian brain, is extremely powerful. Since you've been using it for the last 7.5 million of years, 95% of your life is controlled by this brain. Now you may think that, okay, back then there was this predators and there was this fear of getting killed or maybe dying of hunger. But today I'm not in such a situation. As you can see this, that you are on social media, probably you're watching this video and you're thinking, I don't have fear of dying by a tiger killing me. So why should I have this brain inside me still and controlling my life? Now I'm going to give you a good news and a bad news. The good news is, your brain is still protecting you. And it's not just protecting you from the space of a tiger, which is like a physical danger, or maybe a glacier melting, or maybe you are dying of hunger. When will the next meal come? But this brain actually protects you from any sort of an emotional pain. Every time you go through an event, or maybe a challenge that you went through because of somebody, your brain has captured those moments and saved them inside you. This particular brain does not understand the difference between physical pain and emotional pain. And that's the bad news for you. Even though the good news is that this brain is trying to protect you, but there is no real danger in today's life. The danger is only emotional triggers. Now this brain has actually, converted those tigers into those emotional triggers. And unfortunately, back then, maybe the tiger would attack you and the game would get over in half an hour. But today, the triggers that you have in your life, let's call them emotional tigers, your newspapers, news channels, probably boss, or your financial loss, or EMIs, or a traffic jam, or anything, any person that has been in your life in the past, or maybe in the present. Or you may have gone through any sort of an emotional trauma, or an event that happened in your life that you attach the meaning as something bad that happened to you. This brain comes in picture and immediately puts you in the zone of safety and comfort, because its job is to protect you. Now, once upon a time, the brain that was good for you probably is right now turning against you, because it cannot distinguish between the physical pain and emotional pain. Now that you have understood this, I want you to slightly understand the science and the physiology of this brain. So in this reptilian brain, just around that brain, there are 2 glands in your brain which is called as amygdala. Amygdala is your, watchman of the brain, of your body and your life. Now every time that amygdala is like a vulture who's watching if there is any sort of a pain approaching you. And most likely these emotional pains are not for half an hour in our space, but do you agree with me that they stay with us for 24/7, sometimes 365 days? So every time this amygdala, which is the watchman of your brain, is active and only focusing on this threat, And now you know, because when you focus on your threat, what you're focusing on is the problem. So 95% of your life, you're focusing on the problems. And every time you focus on the problem, it's a vicious cycle that your brain gets into. And if there is a problem, if you're not safe, then how can you go to the safety? How can you go to the survival? And the fear that comes to you is nothing else but your brain telling you that you are not safe. Because every time the fear comes in your space, you get into that state which anxiety, stress, and you want to run away from taking action. You just want to simply go back and curl in your bed and sleep because you feel paralyzed mentally to take that action. And that's the reason I said that you probably are lacking the courage to take action. And that's where the fear is coming from. Now, let me tell you this. As I said, 7.5 million of years back, all of us had the same brain, and we still do have. Then why some people give in to fear and some people take action and be successful? Very simple. You got to understand this, and I want you to write this down. Fear is natural, but action is optional. Courage is optional. And that's the reason when you have the presence of fear in your space, you lack courage. And when you have the courage, you will never have the fear. In spite of having the fear, you will take that action. Now, I want you to understand this. I want you to bring down your fears. Any fear you have that we discussed about earlier, any sort of fear that you have, I want you to categorize them in just 2 fears. The first fear that comes from your 7.5 million year old brain is a fear of not being enough. Remember, you were living alone in a cave back then. Not you particularly, but maybe your ancestors. And everything is stored in your DNA and in your genetics. You have those cellular memories where you were killed by a predator. And that trigger happens in your space every time some fear comes up or you want to take that action. The fear comes in that what if you get betrayed again? What if you fail again? What if something doesn't go right? You start imagining the worst case scenario that may have happened in the ancient time, in your ancestors' time. 7.5 million of years back, you did not have the physical power to take care of yourself. And today also, when something goes wrong in your life, immediately that brain goes into the space of what if I'm not enough to tackle this situation? What if I'm not enough to protect myself? That's your first fear. Write this down. Any fear you have can be categorized into this fear of you not feeling enough. Whether it is not been able to give you 100% to something or whether it's not been able to protect you from something, the whole point is you're going to be the prey to the predator. It's a power game that your mind plays with you and tells you that you're not enough. And the second fear that comes up from 2.5 million of years back, that comes from the space of the community. See, 2.5 million of years back, humans discovered something very powerful. They discovered the language. They discovered how to speak. Humans started living in communities. And back then, the communities were built on the basis of who's physically more powerful. The leader was chosen based on the attributes that the leader can bring in into the community. And most of it was a physical power. Now, every time you tried to rebel against that leader, you were ostracized from the community and you were thrown out of the system. And the moment you're thrown out of the system, you're left on your own. Now, the community which was ready to protect you from the tiger, suddenly, because you're ostracized, now you're on your own. And again, the fear triggers, what if I'm not enough? Now, write down what's your fear. Where does your fear come from? When was the last time or when was the first or the worst time you felt this fear? Is it coming from your childhood or is it coming from some recent event that has happened? You can also look at what are the things that you need to overcome this fear. Because what is fear? You get fear when you are ignorant about something. Think about it in your life. When do you get fearful? When you don't know something, right? You don't get fearful of known things. You only get fearful of unknown things. So ask yourself this question. To know this, where is the gap? What strategies do you need to fill up that gap? What are some of the capabilities and skills you need to build in yourself that you can work on this gap? Whom would you like to support you in your life? to fill this gap and become more aware of what is your fear. What is your environment telling you? Do you have triggers in your environment? Do you have objects and things kept in your environment that takes you back to that event? So what is it that you're going to do about this gap? Make that decision. What are some of the skills and capabilities you need to build within you to overcome this fear? Once you have made that decision, what action are you going to take to overcome that challenge? Because you know what? Decision is never a decision if it is not followed through by action. If you like this video, comment below and let me know what is the part that you resonate most with. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Give it a like and share if you care.